Good morning, everyone. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that we're gathered here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6, and I want to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a deep connection to this land. Yesterday, the UCP government announced the award winners of their Her Vision Inspires essay contest. However, inspiring it was not. The bronze medal winning essay chosen by the UCP contained comments that are misogynistic, sexist, transphobic, racist, and fascist. I will not repeat all of them here today. Indeed, some of them are really quite reprehensible. But I do want to speak directly to two of the comments in the essay. First, this quote. Quote, "Women are not exactly equal to men. To promote that women break into careers that men traditionally dominate is not only misguided, but is harmful." This is a terrible message to send to the young women of Alberta. It's a message that I, as a mother, including of a young girl, completely reject. Women are working hard to break through barriers in a society where sexism is prevalent and continues to keep them from achieving financial, physical, and psychological security. And as leaders, we must never stop pushing for more women in male-dominated industries. Every study shows that this leads to better representation and diversity in governance and leadership in all sectors, including politics. Which is why we recently made the commitment in the NDP to once again ensure that our cabinet table will be at least 50% women. It's frankly embarrassing to have to assert women's equality in 2023. A second quote from the winning essay. Quote, "While it is sadly popular nowadays to think that Alberta children are unnecessary as we can import foreigners to replace ourselves is a sickly mentality that amounts to a drive for cultural suicide." This is an absolutely reprehensible claim. It is a nod to the racist replacement theory that drives white nationalist hate, and which, according to the RCMP, is one of the ways that these dangerous kinds of groups recruit young people. This is absolutely horrific, and these comments should be condemned by elected leaders, not given awards. Sexism, racism, hate. This is not what any government should be celebrating. Yet increasingly, these views are becoming acceptable in this UCP government and even now applauded. This is about more than an essay contest. This is about two visions for women in this province. Under one, you have a UCP government that has consistently failed to support women. Zero new investment in childcare. Underwhelming support for entrepreneurs. Refusal to stand up for women's reproductive health rights, and failure to support women's healthcare more generally. This essay contest was from a project that Jackie Armstrong-Hominick, the Status of Women Associate Minister and MLA for Fort Saskatchewan-Vegreville, and Associate Minister Armstrong-Hominick, along with a panel of female MLAs, had a role in choosing this essay, which reduced the role of women in this province to their reproductive capacity. Albertans need to know which UCP MLAs were on this panel. I can tell you that no NDP MLAs were asked nor participated in this panel. And yet, ironically, women and people who can get pregnant cannot deliver babies at the Fort Saskatchewan Hospital right now, and we've heard nothing from MLA Armstrong-Hominick about that. She refuses to speak about this issue. Yesterday, my amazing colleague, the MLA for Edmonton Highland Norwood, Janice Irwin, went to Fort Saskatchewan to fight for those Albertans and those living in the dozen or so other communities across this province with no obstetrics care, while we are the wealthiest province in Canada. These are the kinds of issues that women in Alberta expect their elected officials to be focused on, not essay contests. Albertans want to pay the bills. They want to grow their businesses. They want good health care and good schools for their kids. That's what Rachel Notley, myself, and our entire Alberta NDP caucus want to do and are committed to doing. I'm here to pledge that should Albertans elect an NDP government, we will stand up for women's equality. We'll create economic opportunity. We'll protect healthcare, invest in education, celebrate diversity, fight hate, and promote women in leadership and help them break down barriers. Thank you, and I'll now take questions.
Thank you. We'll open up the floor to questions. First of all, just a reminder to everyone on Zoom to raise the raise hand function to get in the queue. For everyone on the phone is star 9. We'll start first in the room.
Hi, Rakhi. Dean from CP. Can I just read you one line from the Minister's office responding to this? and then see what you think of it. So they seem to be sort of saying they're backhandedly defending it and then condemning it. The essay contest, they say, was intended to reflect a broad range of opinions from young Alberta women on what democracy means. While the essay in question certainly does not represent the views of all women, myself included, I assume that means Jackie Armstrong, the essay in question should not have been chosen.
So I have a few responses to that. First of all, this notion of a diversity of opinions is being used as a cover for allowing for hateful speech to be celebrated by the government. This is not about a diversity of opinions. They've actually chosen to celebrate and award an essay that actually is talking about white nationalist, racist theories. This is not about diversity of opinions. It's about saying a refusal by the government to say certain views are not acceptable in a democratic, free country. And yet they clearly, not only did they celebrate and award it, they chose it. I mean, this is what we have to be clear about. If the minister, associate minister is saying it should not have been chosen, well, she was the one who chose it. Her and a panel of her colleagues within the UCP were the judging panel, according to the website and the contest rules, who selected this. So the question is, why is the judge who chose it now saying they shouldn't have chosen it? And then who did? But ultimately, this went up. There are a number of checks and balances that go in place before something is promoted like this, put up on a website that's celebrated, and nobody within the UCP stopped and said, this is inappropriate. This is not the vision for Alberta's future. This is not the vision for Alberta women that we want to celebrate. In fact, it was put up, and the only reason Albertans are aware of it is because my colleague, Janice Irwin, brought it to the attention of Albertans. Otherwise, I think this would have been stood for some time as a celebrated essay on Alberta women.
What does it say about this government? We can't seem to get a lot of basic details about who picked it, what the rules were, and it seems like from this statement also that they keep sort of pushing us over to the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians Canadian Region Association. I mean, who's responsible here? Doesn't that need to be made crystal clear from this government, particularly if they're going to start handing out prizes for these contests?
Well, who is responsible is a very good question that a lot of Albertans are asking right now. Certainly, there's a long track record here, this government failing to take accountability for the decisions they've made and the choices they've made. We saw that time and time again with COVID when rules were broken and who was responsible. Albertans rarely got a clear answer on that. But secondly, I would say, this is a government that has been continuously mired in its own internal drama, and they're consumed by what's going on with their leadership race. Before that, it was Jason Kenney's leadership review. It has been one thing after another that has distracted this government from actually doing the work that Albertans elected them to do, which is to govern in a way that supports all Albertans. Once again, we are seeing that this government is not paying attention. They're not accountable. They're not answering questions. They're not taking responsibility. I think Albertans are exhausted by this kind of approach from their government, and they're looking for a government that's focused on working hard for them and to represent them.
Thanks to Shaylan Skalski with CTV. Outside of that statement that we've received in the media, a lot of the details, as you mentioned, are unknown, and now we're noticing that the website has been completely wiped. The essays are no longer available unless you screenshotted them. What do you make of the removal of all of this information?
Well, I think it's a no-brainer that this should have been taken down, but I think the bigger question is, how did it even come up in the first place? Why was it ever posted? Why was it ever chosen? Why was it ever receiving an award and celebrated by this government in the first place? I think it's the very least they can do is to take it down, but I think Albertans deserve some transparency and accountability as to the decision-making. What were the criteria that went into selecting this essay to celebrate? Who was involved in that decision? And what really is the commitment of this government to supporting women? I mean, we have seen a track record from this government of failing them in terms of access to reproductive health care. They were silent when Roe versus Wade was overturned, even though thousands of Alberta women were concerned about what that meant for them and what that meant for Canada. They have, as we've just discussed, there's a lack of obstetrics care in several communities across this province. That's critical health issues for women. We know that women and their families are deeply concerned about the cost of living right now, how they're going to pay for groceries, how they're going to pay for gas, and we have no real measures coming from this government. The questions Albertans should be asking is why isn't the UCP committed to supporting women? And that's why I'm very proud of the work that we've done and we continue to do as the Alberta NDP. You know, we expanded access to reproductive health services when we were in government. We've been clear that we will continue to do that if we're elected. We've been clear and consistent in our commitment to affordable, accessible childcare. We've been clear that we need to tackle head-on the challenges that have been created by this government with respect to healthcare, and that we have to make life more affordable. These are things that Albertan women and families really want to hear about, not essay contests celebrating hate and misogyny.
Yeah, you talk about the need for transparency and accountability on this. We're seeing obviously a lot of questions circling online as to how the Associate Minister of the Status of Women could be responsible for choosing such a thing. I guess, what other actions or consequences would you like to see? Do you think she needs to step away from this role?
Well, I'm not really sure what she's doing in this role right now to begin with. I mean, we have a lame duck premier and a lame duck cabinet right now. You can pick your ministry and you'll find that there's a minister who's not working right now. We're hearing pretty much silence as they're all mired up in their own internal drama. I mean, absolutely an apology needs to come from everyone associated with this essay contest, particularly the Associate Minister for Status of Women. But that's not enough. I mean, Albertans aren't going to accept just another apology because there's questions about how it came about in the first place. But also, they want to see that their government is actually committed to supporting women's equality, supporting families and communities and businesses that are critically important for Alberta to thrive. We are not seeing that. We're not seeing anything from this government right now. They are distracted by their own drama, and they're not hard at work for Albertans. So I'd like to certainly see some clear repudiation, not just from all sitting UCP MLAs, but also from all leadership candidates, but that's just a starting point.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go now to the phone lines. Caller, your line is open.
This might be an essay question in and of itself, but this essay was written by a young Alberta woman. How do you think we got to a point where women in this province are internalizing these kind of messages? Like you mentioned that it's the type of thing repeated in Great Replacement, the replacement theory, or these white supremacist views. How did you think this happens?
Well, thanks for the question, Catherine. I will say that I'm a mother of two young children, including a daughter, and I'm deeply troubled to know these views are out there. I can't comment on the specific author. I don't know who the author is. I don't know why she wrote it. I mean, I clearly believe that these views are deeply misguided. But I think one of the reasons why I think views like this continue to grow in terms of and proliferate and get volume and strength is because governments like the UCP government here have not only not condemned it, but they've actually celebrated it by granting it an award. And this is just one example, but I mean, the problem is we are not seeing a number of conservative MLAs and even at the federal level condemn hate and white nationalism. In fact, they continue to tacitly or explicitly endorse these views by giving voice to them and giving them platform. So, when we ask ourselves, why are these views coming up? I mean, I am deeply troubled as a woman, as a parent, that these views are out there. But I'm very disappointed that the leaders in our community, particularly political leaders, are not taking a firm stance to say no. And even in I believe the statement received by the Associate Minister for Status of Women talked about how this contest was about reflecting a diversity of opinions, which inherently gives more value and platform to the opinions that were celebrated in their award by saying this is just a diversity of opinions. No, this is actually misogyny, it is hate, it is racist, and we should not just not be celebrating it, we should actually be openly condemning it.
Do you have a follow-up, Catherine?
And I guess, why is it that political leaders, such as the ones who chose this to win, why do they not see this the way you see it? Why do they not see it as misogynistic and racist?
I can't answer that question, Catherine. I'm not sure why they don't see this. I don't know if they're seeing some political gain for themselves in terms of who they might gain as supporters. I'm not sure. I would hope that it's not because any of the members actually deeply hold these views themselves, but it's beginning to get difficult to challenge that view, because it certainly seems like they're willing to give airtime and platform and space and support to these kinds kinds of statements. I would invite any of these members who might think that there is some validity to these views to spend some time with diverse communities, spend some time with my constituents, spend some time with Indigenous communities to talk about what the impact of this hate actually is. But I imagine most of these political leaders already know that. And so I can't presume why they think they need to give airtime to this, but certainly they feel like there's some political value for themselves in doing so.
Okay, we'll go to the next caller. Please state your name and outlet. Your line is unmuted.
Hi, it's Lisa Johnson from the Edmonton Journal. I just wanted to loop back to a previous question and get some clarity on this. I mean, the associate minister is the only UCP member that we know was involved in this essay contest. The other members of the judging panel, we don't know who they are. I'm wondering if you would you call for her to resign over this?
Look, I would like to know who the other panel members were on this for this contest. I think all Albertans deserve to know, because each of those elected officials are also need to be held accountable for giving air and space and platform to these views. They're also individual members who will be up for re-election, and I think their constituents have a right to know that they chose this kind of an essay to celebrate. Ultimately, for me, I want to just see a government that is focused on doing the work of supporting women. I mean, that shouldn't be too much to ask. I'm not sure that the associate minister has done much of anything in her role, except for now, been the spokesperson for and key to the judging panel of a contest that celebrates hate and racism and misogyny. So, I don't know if she's qualified to be in this role or anymore. I just think Albertans are tired of this government that is not taking their job seriously, that is not committed to actually taking actions to help Alberta families and communities and businesses. That does not seem to be their focus. And Albertans are sick of it. The lack of action, the poor actions, the misjudgment by these UCP ministers just keep going on and on and on, and Albertans are just frankly exhausted.
Do you have a follow-up, Lisa?
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to touch on something in this particular essay. The vision of Alberta that this author imagines includes a government awarding women for achieving childbirth, for having 2+ children. I'm wondering if you want to speak to the historical precedent for governments that have this kind of policy.
Well, I think, as I stated in my comments, I don't use the term fascism lightly. It's not a thing that I think we should throw around easily because I think it starts to dull its meaning. But I think in this situation, I think you've probably seen enough parallels drawn between the ideology of, for example, Nazis in 1930s Germany, where the call was for women's role and their obligation and their duty to their society was to reproduce in order to preserve, in that case, the German race and culture. And that is the very same language that is used in this essay. It's not only limiting women's entire being and productive value to whether or not they produce children, but it is actually stated in this essay that that is important in order to avoid importing foreigners, which the author relates to being cultural suicide. This is not a dog whistle. It's not a tangential connection. There is a clear connection between the language used in this essay and similar ideologies in fascist societies and fascist examples in the history, such as Nazi Germany. And that's what's deeply troubling. It is continuing to get platform and value. And as an Albertan, as a woman of color, as a parent, as a contributing member of our society and community, I am deeply troubled by this. And I'd like to know how this happened and how it happened without anybody raising their alarms and saying this is inappropriate. Not just inappropriate, this is tantamount to hate speech. This has to be speech that we condemn, not celebrate. I simply don't have an explanation as to how this happened.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller. Jessica, your line is open.
Hi there, Jessica Goose with Global News here. So we've been talking a lot about what you'd like to see the minister maybe do in regards to a response for an apology, condemning things like that. What type of either ramifications, learning, things like that would you like to see from the author?
Well, again, I can't really specifically comment on the author. I mean, I believe the views expressed in the essay are deeply misguided. What I will say is that part of the work that we did as the Alberta NDP caucus was to do a lot of work on anti-racism work and anti-racism training. And it absolutely relates to misogyny and sexism as well. But, the focus, the incredibly important focus of that work was to talk about how important education is. And we know that having a curriculum that is diverse and reflects the experiences and values of all members of our community is incredibly important. And when I think about the author of this essay, without knowing who she is, she's clearly a young person if she qualified for the contest. And I think, perhaps this is why it's so important to have anti-racism content and framing in all of our curriculum. It's really important that we highlight that and stress that as importance, but we also need young people to see leadership from those in positions of power, such as politicians and elected officials, to actually demonstrate their commitment to anti-racism work as well. It's why we've continued to call on greater things such as race-based data collection. It's why we've talked about the importance of having a curriculum that is strong and diverse and actually will support children to thrive in a diverse community like we have here in Alberta. These things are all important, and clearly this young person did not benefit from that, and it just highlights the importance of those issues going forward.
Do you have a follow-up, Jessica?
I do, yeah. Well, how much of a step back would you say this is, not only for women, but then also for people potentially even looking at Alberta as a place to live? I mean, like you mentioned, it was your colleague, Janice, who kind of, sounded the alarm on this. And, it has been shared numerous times now with this type of language, again, that UCP have allowed. Yeah. How much of a step back do you feel this is?
Well, this is just yet another huge embarrassment from Alberta that has been brought on, self-inflicted wound by this government, from the war room to Bigfoot to foreign-funded inquiries that go nowhere, to constitutional challenges that go nowhere, to now this. The UCP government seems intent on tarnishing Alberta's reputation both within Canada but also internationally at every step of the way. And this is not just about being embarrassed, right? And also it's not just about saying this doesn't reflect the views of most Albertans, because it doesn't. But this is also about tarnishing our ability to attract people to Alberta. At a time when we're talking about significant labor shortages, we're talking about wanting to grow exciting new industries like tech and renewable energy, and AI, all of those pieces require Alberta to be a place where people want to come and people want to live and bring their talent and their expertise. When we do embarrassing things such as this, it just perpetuates this false image of what Alberta is, and it does not reflect the true experience of most Albertans. And it damages our economy, it damages our reputation, and it really damages our ability to attract people to a place where we want people to be. So, this is just one more embarrassing incident by the UCP for a government that claims that they're trying to boost our economy. All they do is, at every step of the way, they seem to create more conflict, more problems, and tarnish our reputation.
Thank you. We'll do one more pass for questions. Just a reminder, if you're on the phone, it's *9. On Zoom, it's raise hand function to get in the queue. Any more questions here?
Rakhi, do you have any concerns with the other two essays?
Sorry, what was that?
Do you have any concerns with the other two essays?
There were some comments that were, made in a couple of the other essays, but I think they kind of reflect perhaps a young perspective. I mean, there was one comment, I think, in one essay that talked about, being a feminine quality to want to have a family. And, I think overall, though, the message was still about empowering women and getting them more involved in these spaces, where we actually had an essay here, the one that received the 3rd place honor, which was supposed to be an essay about what you would do as an MLA. And the author seemed to suggest that women should not be MLAs because that is a space that is predominantly male. There was certainly, I don't need to agree with everything in the essays by any means. I think there were some good pieces in the other essays, but this 3rd essay was simply should have raised so many red flags and should have been disqualified from the beginning.
Just one more pass for questions. Okay. Seeing none, that concludes our press conference. Thank you, everyone.
So much for watching, and to learn more, check out albertasfuture.ca.